In terms of other challenges and where we see programmatic heading in 2016, we're kind of coming to an end here. The recent stats are sort of 80% of all buyers and sellers are using programmatic as part of their campaigns and putting spend into it. Do we think, that figure will increase in 2016? And what areas can we see programmatic really kind of moving into? We've seen the kind of start of programmatic in television, programmatic and mobile, and I was at an event a few months back where they talked about programmatic and music, which as a music fan got me quite excited, but more from a point of view of having music that sets the tone for whatever time of day it is for you and whatever place or whatever event you're at. So I kind of quite like that. Where do we think that the key things will fall in 2016?
So I think some of the main things that we're looking at and where I see potential growth is around things like second-party data partnerships. I think potentially there'll be some growth there. I think sometimes with third-party data there's a challenge that it's not very accurate because it's modelled. So I think being able to share data with another advertiser would be really, really valuable. I also think there'll be more growth in things like programmatic moving into other marketing channels, such as outdoor, radio and TV. But I think one of the biggest areas of growth will be around attribution in programmatic, and it is by far one of my biggest challenges. I think as we want to spend more in programmatic and we want to invest more in different types of strategies, we need to crack attribution, or at least get to a position where we understand the value of some of those activities we're running are actually playing in our overall marketing mix. So I think in the next few months or over the next year, we'll definitely see improvements in attribution as well and what we're doing in that space.
Yeah, I agree. I think the interesting thing about people talking about programmatic moving into other media channels is, again, it comes back to the question we asked at the beginning, where you really need to define what programmatic means, because if we mean automated trading and using technologies to trade and to buy where possible in real time, then absolutely I think people can see that applying to different media channels. But I think the difference between digital and mobile and the other media channels is just this ability to target people on an individual level. So of course, if when people talk about programmatic out of home, you can't control who's walking past the poster site. You can't rely on them clicking on that poster site. You can't have that kind of two-way engagement, which I think, if the definition of programmatic is using individual data and layering on, layers and layers of individual data, that's more difficult to apply to the other media channels. So I see absolutely an increase in automated trading and some of the same data analysis techniques applying to the other media channels, which again is the importance for us of recruiting the right people who are able to deal with that amount of data coming back from a media buy. But I'm not sure that programmatic as we currently define it can really apply to many media channels beyond digital and mobile.
It's interesting. I might disagree. I would say this, wouldn't I? Sat where I am, but I might disagree slightly with it. I think the example that you give about out of home, things like bus stops, for example, you're right in as much as we don't know who stood by the bus stop, but we do know if it's raining or not. And that might make a difference to the advertiser that wants to put something in that particular ad slot at that moment in time. So there are sort of those slightly more disparate data sets that can be utilised. Weather is one example, but there are numerous that can be utilised on a non-one-to-one basis for those channels. I think, like you say, it comes back to, let's talk about what the definition is. Automated buying is the RTB piece. That's, can the buy be done automated and efficiently? Yes, it can. We can tick that box. If we're going to be intelligent in the use of available data, so things like TV, for example, we've been buying TV now through our platform in North America for the best part of a year, hopefully next month or so in Europe as well. And that's both connected and addressable. And there's a huge wealth of data that we utilise to inform those buys on a household level. So, yes, I don't know who's sat on the sofa watching the screen, but I do know, the viewing habits of that household. I do know the time of day. I do know their other interactions. And if I'm able to join, the devices that are in that house with the TV and utilise the data that I've gathered from the tablet, the laptop, the 3 phones that are in the house, combined with knowing set-top box ID or the Apple TV ID or the PlayStation 4, whatever the device is, I can start to be a lot more intelligent in terms of telling that kind of sequential story for a brand. and being able to the attribution point, I can be a lot more intelligent about frequency capping and again that sort of that sequence of messaging that comes that brands want to tell when they're telling a story. So and this question kind of goes right back and touches on where's the growth coming from, and I think a lot of the growth is going to come from the fact that more intelligent use of data to make better buying decisions is going to be driven in other channels going forward. So by default, you wind up with a bunch of budget that was previously in a channel that wasn't classified as programmatic. All of a sudden, the channel becomes classified as programmatic purely because we're using some kind of information, some kind of intelligence to drive the media buying decision. So that for me, I think, is a big part of where this growth has come from. And it's a combination of certain large players, both on the media side and the agency side, almost reclassifying overnight the fact that the way we bought video, it was traditional. I used to go to that publisher, do a deal, I'll buy this many impressions for this much money, put the phone down, that was a traditional media buy, put it in the ad server, serve the impressions out. Now, because the trading desk is running it through some sort of platform and applying some sort of decision-making logic to it, by definition it's programmatic. It's the same money that was spent yesterday, arguably on the same type of inventory in the same channel, and I think almost to Jenny's point, there's a lot of advertisers out there that probably aren't aware that their agency is doing this on their behalf behind the scenes, and they're generating greater efficiencies, but sometimes certainly those smaller advertisers perhaps aren't aware that it's going on. But I think adoption of new channels going into 2016 is going to be a big driver of continued growth in what we affectionately call programmatic.
That's very interesting. I mean, how far away are we from achieving that now in terms of like that whole multi-channel connection and working out from out of home to the weather to when they're leaving their house to get the bus? I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, TV. So we use weather data now. Columbia, the outdoor clothing advertiser, is a client of ours, and depending on, this is a North American thing I'm talking about, whether it's snowing or whether it's raining, we advertise different jackets. It's, Chewy, I'm sure, with their dynamic creative solution are employing similar tactics. I think for us, we've been buying TV for a long time, and it's mainly our automotive and FMCG clients that are the big TV advertisers that are wanting to utilise programmatic TV and connected and addressable channels. We're dabbling with out of home at the moment, and digital radio is reasonably well advanced for us, and digital radio again can utilise a whole array of different data channels. This is part of the challenge. Part of the challenge is looking at a channel, understanding what is it that we're trying to derive from this channel in terms of an objective, an output, and then which data sources are appropriate to help drive decision making within that channel. And the other piece of this is, how does that channel, by the way, relate to all of the other channels? Because if we're in a situation where we're starting to glue them all together at the back end, I spoke about it a minute ago, this notion that, within a household and a bunch of devices and a TV, I've now got pretty good visibility on who's there. They're all on the same IP address at the same time of day. There's different browsing habits between different devices. You can start to, if you've got enough sort of data crunching power, you can start to make some fairly intelligent decisions about who's sat there, who's doing what, who's interested, who's not. I think part of the challenge is going to be having people who can take a step back, look at the available data sets, and start to determine, as an FMCG client, is my information that I'm getting from dunnhumby or Tesco or Kroger over in the US, that's till level sales data, the best driver for my decision making process, or is it the weather data, or more often than not a combination of many data sets used in a fairly complex way to drive efficiencies? But it's not far off, let's be honest. Most of the major infrastructure is there. We're doing it with TV now, we're playing in radio at the moment, and I think Sammy berated herself and brands earlier on for not being quick enough to up their game in the creative aspect of programmatic, and I kind of wanted to step in and defend you a little bit, because I think it needs to become commercially viable. It's fine for people like me to stand there and go, hey guys, I've got this amazing thing, it does everything, wow. Spend loads of money on creative, because that's what it required, right? You needed to go to your agencies and your creative and go, hey, I need 27 different versions of this. I've got a product suite of 7,500 products and I want it each to be personalised. right, from a creative guy's perspective, that's a bit of a nightmare, particularly when you don't yet wrap your head around the technology. So, investment levels from brands and agencies to utilise it, it had to become commercially viable first before brands and agencies were prepared to put money in. That was the right way to do it. They shouldn't have been putting money into something that wasn't commercially viable at the time. And I think the same is going to be true of the new channels that we adopt, be it TV, be it out of home, be it radio. There needs to be a commercial viability. We see enormous amounts of money, again, predominantly from our perspective, from Lexus, Mercedes, Ford Motor Company, General Mills. It's those type of clients that are investing heavily in TV with us right now, as you might expect, the traditional TV video type buyers.
Just interesting, we talked about the brands again, and what I like, Sammy, was your point about the collaboration of brands, how you'd like to see more brands collaborating from a programmatic standpoint. What are the kind of other brands out there that you see that are really driving this space and are kind of real pioneers, if you like?
So I think one of the challenges actually around programmatic is that there's so many advertisers wanting to get more involved and understand more about it, and I think in the past there hasn't necessarily been many advertisers willing to share learnings, and I think that's starting to change. Like, I have conversations with other advertisers all of the time, and I find it so valuable, and I think other advertisers do too. So in terms of advertisers that I think are doing things well, advertisers that have spoken and they've talked to other people about what they're doing. So I think Nestle is a good example. I know Gavin over there quite well, and I know that he's really pioneered that within their organisation. So I'd say they're a brand that are doing a lot in this space.
And Jenny, from what you've seen, obviously you mentioned Suzuki, which is quite interesting. Are you got a lot of clients out there, or seeing some out there that you think actually they've really started to kind of hit the nail on the head and really understand where it goes?
I think it's interesting actually, to Chris's point, because I was in a meeting yesterday with one of our retail clients who's seeing a lot of growth through their e-com channel right now, and myself and our team start chatting about what we can do in the future programmatically and how we can change. They're a fast-moving retail business as well, and literally we were with the creative agency, and literally the colour kind of drained out of the creatives' face, like, what? No, we can't do that. On the basis that they have to turn around as traditional media quite quickly in terms of copy and things like that. But we just see, there's no shortage of opportunity in terms of data, and there's no shortage of opportunity in terms of tech partners. The challenge is that I think we need to overcome short term, and I think we've done well to get to the end of this without raising any of the things that like ad fraud and viewability and things like that. I think that's that is still a challenge for our clients, and brand safety, and we need to take that seriously. And I think we also need to be realistic in terms of there's what the technology can deliver and what will actually be deliverable in real time.
Well, I mean, I didn't want to disappoint you. We thought we'd save some of those questions to the end. But I suppose before we get on to brand safety, I suppose one of the key things for you is how do you ensure that kind of programmatic takes a bigger slice of that marketing pie? How do we ensure, Sammy, that the guys here can take some more of your big marketing spend and put it into the programmatic world?
I think the way that we do it over at TUI is based on shared learnings across different markets. So getting a proof of concept running in one market and understanding that it can work, and then sharing that with other markets and promoting that across the business is something that works quite well for us in terms of investing more in programmatic.
And I think for me that's the wrong question for an agency, because it's not in our interest to drive programmatic or to try and stop it. We will buy the media that works best for the advertisers, so we have to kind of put the advertiser first. We don't have any target about what percentage programmatic. We don't even have any target about what percentage should be on digital, because I think it's wrong as an agency to try and enforce those kind of targets. And I think the reason that some agencies do force that target is, again, goes back to this non-transparent business model. And I think programmatic has got huge benefits, and huge. We've seen some brilliant results, but I don't think it's up to the agency to try and force it onto the agenda.
I couldn't agree more with Jenny. I think programmatic as an industry, its future relies upon it being able to demonstrate its worth, prove it, show me. Now that's in some ways it's counterintuitive, because there's sort of stratospheric growth within the industry. As a technology provider, us and a lot of our fellow tech providers are kind of enjoying this stratospheric growth. But at the same time, it's almost a game of inches and feet as well. We have to prove the case for programmatic TV. Luckily we've got some very I nearly use the word tame clients then, that's a politically incorrect term, isn't it? Some very friendly clients that we've worked with and innovated over many, many years, who are prepared to kind of take the plunge with us and co-innovate alongside us as a technology provider that gives us the ability to kind of create the proof points, test it, make it work. But Jenny's point's absolutely right. Shouldn't be adopting any element of programmatic just because it's trendy to do so, or because Amex declared last year that they were going to have 80% of their total media spend was going to be programmatic by the end of 2016, or whatever crazy claim it was they made. The agency's job, quite rightly, is to make the right decision about the media that's going to be most effective for the brand. So programmatic has to demonstrate its worth before it can be adopted by brands and agencies. I guess the only twist I would put on it is that agencies' role in this, I think they need to, as I know Jenny's agency is, they need to be, as an industry, very open-minded to what the opportunities are, because there are a lot of agencies that aren't as forward-thinking as Seven Stars, and are a little bit more blinkered about, I just buy it from Dave though, right? I did that deal and he took me for lunch, you remember? Which is, that's not necessarily in the interest of the brand right now. That's the right piece of media at the right price. So I think agencies' role, whilst it shouldn't be to proactively push or detract from programmatic per se, they have a responsibility as an agent of their client to act in the best interest, and in doing so they need to keep an open mind as to what those opportunities are and when do those opportunities, as I say, become commercially viable and of interest to their client.
Absolutely, and you raised a few good points there, and it ties nicely, I suppose, to the elephant in the room, but